This episode we're going to look at some of the impacts on Asia that may have occurred during a conflict between the US and the British Empire. In the speculative realm of alternative histories, envisioning a conflict between the United States and one of its long-standing allies, United Kingdom and Canada, during the 1930s opens a door to a cascade of potential global consequences. As we explore the theoretical aftermath of such a clash, we turn our attention to the intricate web of geopolitical dynamics in Asia. In the 1930s, had the United States engaged in military hostilities with the United Kingdom and Canada, the repercussions would have extended far beyond the Atlantic. The influence of major world powers on the Asian continent during this period was profound, and a hypothetical conflict could have significantly altered the course of events. British colonies in India, British colonies in Asia such as India, Malaysia and Hong Kong would likely have felt the tremors of a US-UK confrontation. The disruption caused by a conflict between these allies might have emboldened nationalist movements seeking independence. The vacuum left by a weakened British Empire could have accelerated the decolonisation process in Asia. The 1930s marked a period of Japanese expansionism, with ambitions to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. A conflict between the US and its allies might have presented Japan with strategic opportunities. The weakened British and American naval forces could have influenced the balance of power in the Pacific, potentially altering the dynamics of the Second Sino-Japanese War and influencing Japan's territorial aspirations. The hypothetical conflict could have had varying impacts on China. While a weakened British presence might have indirectly benefited Chinese nationalists, the altered geopolitical landscape could have also emboldened Japanese forces in their quest for dominance in the region. The Sino-Japanese War might have taken a different turn with the reshuffling of alliances and resources. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union was navigating its own political and territorial challenges. A conflict between the US and its allies could have influenced Soviet strategies, potentially leading to shifts in alliances or territorial aspirations in Central Asia. The ripple effects might have altered the intricate balance of power between the Soviet Union, China and Japan. The hypothetical conflict in the Atlantic could have prompted nations in Asia to reconsider their alliances. Nations might have sought new partnerships based on perceived opportunities and threats. The altered global balance of power could have accelerated the realignment of nations, shaping the geopolitical landscape of Asia in unforeseen ways. Amidst the theoretical hostilities, diplomatic channels would have likely have been active in the quest for a resolution. Key Asian nations might have played diplomatic roles to mitigate the impact of the conflict on their interests. International mediation efforts might have been initiated to prevent further escalation and stabilise the situation. While the idea of a US and UK conflict in the 1930s is purely hypothetical, exploring its potential repercussions on Asia unveils a complex tapestry of geopolitical dynamics. The scenarios painted here are speculative, emphasizing the interconnected nature of global affairs and the far-reaching consequences that major conflicts can have on distant regions. Fortunately, history unfolded differently, and the strong bonds between the US and the UK and their allies endured, contributing to the eventual stability of post-World War order. Now, the aim of America would have been to expand into Asia, because that's the nearest continent to them. And so Japan would have been an interesting dynamic. I suspect what would have happened was that America may have gone into an alliance pact in the same way that Germany did with Russia during World War II, whilst America was dealing with the British Empire. And then at some point, would probably, once they have finished dealing with the British Empire, would have turned their attention to Japan. Because I don't think, had America enacted War Plan Red and their ambitions to expand into Asia and become the #1 hegemony in Asia, they would have allowed Japan to seek similar ambitions. They may have allowed it to begin with because they didn't want to be fighting on two fronts, but eventually I think they would have turned around after dealing with the British, and if they succeeded in dealing with the British, shall I say, they would have turned their attention to Japan and then taken on Japan and as an adversary. I don't believe they would have allowed Japan to expand, especially when their own ambitions were to be #1. Now, at the end of World War II, things had changed. The British Empire was falling apart because Britain was too weak due to the war. Japan was completely put in its place, and they were weak and had no, after losing losing the war. So the post-war period opened up the Asia and pretty much the rest of the world for America to become the dominant power. They filled that vacuum left at the end of World War II. So they achieved the goals with which War Plan Red was meant to would have been designed to achieve. They achieved that at the end of World War II. So I've no doubt that once America dealt with Britain, they'd have turned their sights onto Japan. Anyway, that's all for this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.